As you can understand, English is not my native language. I come from Italia, so it will be dodgy here and there. I apologize for that. I would like, in 20 days, my fellowship at the Rachel Carson Center will be over. So I'm happy to be back to my home. It's not my hometown, but I'm happy to be back to my home, whatever it is. And I'm sad to leave Rachel Carson Center because it was such a great experience. And above all, I don't speak about the very bright people I met here, but the atmosphere, I think, made a difference. It's really something that was astonishing. And this friendship, this sort of very, very relaxed attitude was combined with a very open and very clear discussions, which is something that is really, really a gift. Not in the German way, but in the English way. So really, really, I'm very happy about that. And I'm very happy that the Rachel Carson Center has won the selection. So you have been granted again. It's really something, I think that the staff and the directors deserve that, really. That's from my heart. But let's move, because I've been told that I have not so much time. The presentation aims are 2 points. The first is presenting transportation as a crossover or different fields. And I'm doing this because more than 10 years ago I was working on mental hospital history. And no one asked me if I was a doctor or a psychiatrist. Maybe they thought I was mental, but they didn't thought, okay, you are a doctor. And then I moved to transports. And every second day someone told me, oh, okay, so you're an engineer. Say, no, actually, no, I'm an historian. Oh, how it comes? Because it's transport, so you should be expert in technologies. And I mean, at the beginning it was fun, and it's still fun today. But there is something there. Surely there is something there. I will try to explain my point of view on that. Fortunately, the mobility and transport field is growing, so it will be not difficult. And the second point is about the research I've done here. They pay me for 6 months, so I should make them happy in presenting something about environmental studies. Otherwise, they could complain, right? And so I think the European tramway renaissance after the 70s, it's a very appealing point, because it reveals how, in the popularized way, it has been done for changing travel behavior and reduce pollution, energy consumption. But if you work beyond the surface, you discover that actually the reasons behind the tram revival are very different. And I will try to present my point here today. So, how is transport generally conceived as a derived demand? So I have my room in Gauting, I have to come to Rachel Carson, so I need a transport system. I have to get my S-Bahn, come here. This is a derived demand. I need to move because I have an activity there, which is sleep and eat, and I have activity here in München, which is working. So this is a classical approach to do something somewhere else, and you need a transport system to do that. Otherwise, it's impossible to move. This very dry approach to mobility, to transport, was not just about engineering planners or politicians. Also, social science were considering mobility as something that was exceptional. There was really a sort of mindset in which society and people are linked to a place, which can be home, and therefore the movements are absolutely corollary and related to the main activities. It was not investigated as an activity itself. So this is something that we have to be aware of. It's not just that the economists and the planners conceive transport just as a derived demand, but also social scientists and humanities too, where understanding the transport and the mobility system is something marginal in the wider scheme of the transport and the societal discussion. We conceive usually transport as something technological, and in which just the experts have the the ability, the gift, and the possibility to enter the discussion, because the moment you say that this is a high complex and high technological field, well, of course, you need a deep technological understanding. Otherwise, you cannot even enter the debate. Any plane we are getting has about 200 computers on board, and managing an airport is something hugely complex. It's hugely complex. You cannot step in easily in this discussion because it's really, really technological driven. But I would like today to discuss with you these statements. How much are they revealing about the real face of complexity of transport systems, and how much they are also, how to say, shaping the discussion, and they are hiding actually some political and societal issues there. And I would start with the derived demand. It's moving just the derived demand. I'm guessing what you are thinking. This is not a transport system. This is not a transport system. My white people are paying to move around like an idiot. Or they are stupid, or there is a lot of fun there. I don't see other option. If you have, please tell me. So, my point is that moving not necessarily is a derived demand. People are paying for the sake of mobility, for the sake of transport. If weren't so, Ferrari and Lamborghini would be closed down at the foundation. People are aiming to have a personal, enlightening experience of mobility and traveling. This is the point. This is something that usually the social scientists didn't recognize in the past, but the marketing offices of many industry knows very well, including BMW. They know very well that having a fancy car is something that expresses yourself. So moving is also an expression of identities. And I would say that this approach to transport as something technological is actually hiding, as I said, something which is very political. Mimi Scheller pointed out that this is a presidential parade. So the mobility for a group of people means the immobility for all the others. And this is the fact. Mobility for someone means necessarily exclusion from mobility for somebody else. It's not a zero-sum game. Someone is winning, someone is losing. And this is the most evident expression of that, is that controlling the space, controlling transport means also an exhibition of power, of course. There are a lot of security reasons behind that. I don't discuss this, but it's also a way, like in medieval time, for the king to show the regalness, the power they have. On the other way around, we have also differentiation in traveling. It's not one boat business. Someone can pay more and have the fast track at the airport, and somebody cannot. And somebody cannot fly at all, and somebody cannot buy a car at all, and somebody cannot buy a bike at all. So it's a very complex way in which the theoretical free open access for everyone is not free at all, and it's not open at all. So I would say that this sort of representation, we should keep in mind that there is a sort of power expression linked to transport. And I would say that traveling is one of the most gendered space we have. You can have women with burqa or women half naked, but especially automobility is one of the most powerful way of expression of masculinity. And even if you go to a railway museum, you will see mainly males there. So mobility and their technologies are strictly gender related, and usually are expression of some sort of gender dissonance, gender power. So I would say that also in this case, avoiding women, impeding women, banning women to drive in Saudi Arabia, or making women as a way of showing masculinity in this advertising. The masculinity is the car is a way to express themselves in this gendered way, is something that is really relevant, I think. And unfortunately, we have very few studies on that. It's really an open field. And now comes even more difficult, because if we move the tone from transport to mobility, then it comes that mobility can be twofold. It can be physical mobility. I'm moving from Torino, my home country, to München because I'm working here, but this physical mobility involves also social mobility, because for me it was an enhancement. And so in this respect, if we shift from transport to mobility, we notice that often, not necessarily always, but often, social mobility is linked to physical mobility. Immigrants are one way of expressing that, but it's just one way to express that. Often just moving in another district of the city, moving to another city in the same country, or moving completely to another country, a way of making physical mobility which is strongly related to a social mobility. And we will see how this today is becoming even more problematic than it was. It's less linear than it was in the past. Social science, so are understanding this, I would say, in the past 10 years. And, Bauman and his liquid life, liquid society express a new way of conceiving societal expression as liquid, not anymore as linked to a place. As the main category are not anymore people linked to a place, but are people disconnected, good or bad it is, to a place. So they are liquid, they are changing, and they are moving, therefore, according to the container they have. And the shift, the understanding of the role of mobility in this respect has been very, very important. It was very important also in the past, I would say. We all know this guy. Goethe traveled to Italy. This is the reason I think that all Germans love Italy. And for him was a Bildung. And this is not just the expression of a very clever, enlightened, rich man in the Enlightenment period. There is an Italian and German proverb which say, I will try to say that in German, Stadtluft macht frei, which is, in Italian makes l'aria della città rende liberi. If you move to the city, you are free. So physical mobility, leaving the servitude of the countryside and moving to the city, and say 1 year, 1 day, made you citizen of the city, not anymore a servant. And so the mobility, physical mobility, has intrinsically an emancipatory element. Moving is freedom. How many times we heard this? How many times we experienced this? Traveling is something that enriches us a lot. At least this is my experience. There is the dark side. Already in the 60s, Lewis Mumford discovered that there can be a compulsory mobility, something that you are forced to do. And I'm very happy to be in München, but every weekend I was back in Berlin to meet my family, and this was a compulsory mobility for me. So mobility is a gift, but can be both sides, in English and German, can be also something that poisons you. And with the development, especially of high-speed train and low-cost airways companies, it's becoming very cheap and easy to travel. So we have more and more people, especially in some areas like Europe and South China, people that are dwelling in between. They have 2 homes, 2 offices, and they are traveling all the time. At this point, traveling is not anymore a Bildung. However, despite this burden we have traveling, I would say that still the main mindset is that mobility and traveling is an emancipatory action. Okay, so this is transport. We cannot discuss that these are not. These are transport systems. I told you about running an airport, but run this sort of stuff, it's really complicated. And here, as soon as you have some, it's like to run a bike. The moment you don't pedal anymore, you drop. The motorways has the same effect. The moment something goes wrong, you block everything. They are very complex, very frail systems. Those are mobility. You have tons of books on that, statistics, and people working on that. And I let you guess how many people are working on this. This is not even conceived as mobility. Because the approach, especially in Western mature economies, but also in emerging economies, that mobility usually is motorized and wheeled. If it's not that, this sort of movement, this sort of traveling is not even in the statistics. You can get the European Union statistic about transport, and you have how many people are using a car, how many people are using a train, an airplane, a bus, blah, 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 blah. Bikes, sometimes, not ever. No statistics about people using the legs, which actually, okay, we have some problems now, right, with the environment. And they are spending billions in trying to move us away from high-polluting, high-energy way of using traveling, and we don't count how big is this phenomenon of people traveling. So we're using, in other words, 90-20 paradigms to understand today mobilities. This is the gap we have, one of the gaps we have. I think that critical mass, the bike meetings that you have in the city, informal, they reveal this antinomy when they say they were told, you stop the traffic, and they reply, we are the traffic. This is the point. I think this was really illuminating the discussion, is that the traffic has been conceived as something that you have the right to use public space, for instance, roads, only if you are in a car, if you are in a train. If you are not using this sort of dominant, whatever you can conceive that, it becomes immediately that you are not part of the game, and therefore you are excluded, ignored, eclipsed, you are not part. In the moment they made critical mass, this reply was really relevant because it opened let's say the Pandora cage, and everything becomes, okay, actually it's correct. They are traffic too. People using legs are traveling too. It's transport too. So I think that this is really revealing. As I said, working on transport is highly, highly relevant because the environmental externalities of traveling, as we are conceiving that today, the mainstream at least, gives us so many headaches and so many problems that we should really address in a different way this topic. I would say that, I told you earlier that we are framing this problem using 90-20's approach today. And the way we are discussing today, I make it simple, it's not so simple, but the way we are doing today is that, okay, we remove this pollution, we put electric cars, business as usual, more or less. We are not questioning the mainstream. We are not questioning what is this. We are not questioning this. We are simply trying to fix technologically, usually, this sort of the issue. I'm a little bit provocative. I know that the reality is a lot more complex, but I would like to be a little bit provocative. In this frame, I think we can understand a little bit the tram revival. Usually, if you open a magazine, a newspaper, books, the accent is public transport can make the difference because they can move a lot of people together, so the pollution is hugely lower, and it's a way of socialize and so on. So I thought that when I start my work on that, I've discovered that actually the reality is very different, although we have anyway a very important topic here, which is energy. Energy was really central, but I would like to present you this problem asking help to Roger Rabbit, because I think he can help us. Usually I have always problem with clips, so fingers crossed. Thanks.
Newtown will be released in a matter of minutes. lanes of shimmering cement running from here to Pasadena. Smooth, safe, fast. Traffic jams will be a thing of the past.
So that's why you killed that little room? For this freeway?
Kid, of course not. You'll have to visit. I see a place where people get on and off the freeway. On and off and on all day, all night. Soon, where Toontown once stood will be a street of gas stations, inexpensive motels, restaurants that serve rapidly prepared food, tire salons, automobile dealerships, and wonderful, wonderful billboards reaching as far as the eye can see. My God, it'll be beautiful.
Come on. Nobody's gonna drive this lousy freeway when they can take a rent car for a nickel.
Well, they'll drive. They'll have to. You see, I bought the red car so I could dismantle it.
Okay. I don't like conspiracy theory because it's always somebody else's fault. If we have an enemy, the enemy is us. I think using a car is wonderful. It's safe, it's fast, it's comfortable. It cocoons you. If we don't understand that, we fail any way of trying to change transport behavior. This is but it's too fun. So I wanted to present you that behind the conspiracy theory, there is also another stuff that transport systems are really central in shaping our societies. It's okay if you have a car system, automobility for everyone. Okay, the society will be shaped according to that. Wow, for me it's a lot, even too much. Because it means that you have a technological system and society is driven by that. It's true, maybe, but do we all agree about that? Because there is a lot of technological determinism. The same we have today, actually, the moment we say, we put more bikes and more bikes lane and we will change the society. Okay, wow, that's really big step. I think that we should work on this. Unfortunately, there is, especially in environmental studies, I think there is, at least that I know, in this field of transport, we need a more detailed, more even controversial discussion, because otherwise we don't get any change. This is what I would like to say. But forget what I told you so far. The 20th century was the car century, right? 1949, you have the advertising, the new car every year, the dog, the kid is very excited, the daddy, the women excited too, because of course it's 1949. So everyone is happy, oh, the technology showing itself, I like this sort of cars, but I think that as historians, we conceive these, even in the most successful moment, the heyday of car mobility, we still kept trams running around, especially in Germany, actually. Germany, Belgium, Austria, Switzerland. The really rich Switzerland had trams all along the century. So it's not income-based. Swiss are not poor. There is something else behind that, and not necessarily everyone was doing that. Paris and London removed the trams in the 30s because they need more space for cars. But then I discovered that Volvo headquarters, Gothenburg, and Turin, my city, Fiat headquarters, the core, the fabric, the factory town, they kept the trams. So I would say that here we have some problems. It's not a master narrative where you go from one point to another. It's a lot more complex, I would say. So we have not black and white, we have grays. Some countries like France, UK, Spain, Italy to some extent, not Germany, as I say, no Belgium, Austria, Switzerland, and of course not on the other side of the Iron Curtain. On the other side, they kept trams all the century. Not because they wanted, but because they had no alternatives. However, the point was in the 70s. Why European and Americans started to discuss about that? The American history is more complex. I focus on the European history, and then maybe we can discuss in a comparative way these two approaches. But in Europe, the idea of put trams again started with the oil crisis, 1973. The problem was energy, especially for France. There is this problem that they have the good oil control, especially in former colonies. But anyway, they say, okay, we need something else, a better way of using energy. Tramway enters this debate. The oil crisis is the starting point. The energy autonomy is the target, so very nationalist problem. And atomic electricity, nuclear production, is the way to fix the problem. So at this point we are looking at trams in a very different way. I bet so. So why they made this tram revival? First, because using cars is simply stupid. We are using a huge quantity of oil to move one person and 1 ton of metal and plastic with us. And makes no sense if you understand this in a practical way. If you don't consider identity, comfortness, and so on, it's very silly. So one way to reduce oil import is to use trams. The other way, because the beginning was this, and then in the 80s they start to say, like in Strasbourg, they start to say, wait a minute, we are putting this new public transport line, which have to feed, I'm concluding, they have to feed the captives. In the territory, captives are those who have not a car. So they are captive in the public transport system. And, in this way we can feed these people. This is usually a left-wing program. The right-wing program can be the same, but they are not feeding the captives officially. They are making community-oriented areas. This is what the conservative Americans are telling us today about trams. So it's a way of making social inclusion, whatever you can consider, on the left, on the right. And in many cities like Bilbao or Strasbourg, is a way to renew the urban landscape. So far I didn't see transport in this, so it's not. And at the end, but in the late 90s, they start to say, and by the way, we can try to reduce also car dominance. And to some extent, the target of light rail or tram revival in the 70s were more or less the same targets of electric streetcars in the 1890s, more or less. We have not so many, make efficient, a good way of making urban mobility efficiency. Real estate Omega have an interest, like in Barcelona. Barcelona, they made the trams because they were making the Forum in 2004, don't remember? So, plus in the 70s, budget reduction already. So making a subway was too expensive, tram was a good substitute. This, of course, this is a rendering of this beautiful city. You have one car. One car. This is like, it's really, okay. And this is, of course, the Rame tram is like a champagne flute. I'm not joking. They've done that because they understood very well that this is part of city identity. There was a pool of designer behind that. It's not just the automobile industry which has good designer, it's also. So, I think we should rethink the 20th century master narrative about transport history, but more widely, mobility. Trams were an old technology which was represented like bikes. So, technology can have a long life, and I would say there are no progressive tales here. Because if we are biking today like 100 years ago, we should re-understand technology in a different way. Any success for the trams? Well, no. Every second day on the newspaper of München you have this problem, the Stau, der Stau, die Stau, der Stau. So the trams didn't move people, didn't move away from cars. But the trams are crowded, so out it comes. Out it comes. So I would say, and this is one of the last, I would say that we are considering transport in a very engineering way, as a flow. You have a flow, this is the flow, and you can, someone say it's an expanding gas. And the moment you offer new way of moving, is filling hidden mobility request. So it's doing something that, it's not that, okay, I'm moving away people from the car. And when you move, even if you move away people from the cars, somebody else is entering the game of the automobility because you make some position free there. So this is again the core concept that why is an expanding gas? Because maybe moving is fun. Because moving is part of our identity, because moving is a lot of things. We should focus on that point. Otherwise, I think that we don't understand completely the problem we have on the environmental side. And the inertia. When you buy a car, it lasts for 5-10 years. When you buy a locomotive, it lasts for 30-40 years. When you make an airport, how much lasts an airport? 50 years? I don't know. So we're weak signals that things are changing, but nevertheless, they are weak signals. We don't know what is coming. We know that young people have less drive license. They are using less automobile systems also as passengers, but let's see, I think it's an open game, and so we have a lot to do in the future, and this is a tram, of course. Speaking of identity, I mean, I'm very keen of this photo. Many thanks.